And you also have to have it mobile if possible. So the ability to apply for a job in under 5 minutes on your phone is extremely attractive to candidates, just like buying something on Amazon.
That's David Draper. He's the manager of recruiting and employment at the Lewis Group of Companies, one of the nation's largest privately held real estate developers. As the company's talent acquisition leader, David fosters strategies that drive talent acquisition, recruitment marketing, and employee engagement initiatives. David attended California State University Northridge and has his human resources management certification from UC Riverside. He began his career over 20 years ago, and prior to recruiting, David was a talent agent in Beverly Hills, placing actors in major film, television, and theater productions.
You're listening to the Multifamily Leadership Podcast with Patrick Antrim, your source for success strategies for multifamily professionals, CEOs, executive leaders, and aspiring leaders that want to drive high-performance results for their property or portfolio.
This is Patrick Antrim, founder and CEO of Multifamily Leadership and producer of the Multifamily Leadership Summit, where top multifamily executives come together in a one-of-a-kind leadership summit to design fresh ideas for the future of multifamily. Welcome to the Multifamily Leadership Podcast, where I speak to executive leaders, authors, and business leaders on the topics of innovation, technology, and leadership. It is our goal to give you insight into what top leaders are doing to re-envision the leasing experience and manage the apartment of the future. If you'd like to get access to other resources like videos, articles, show notes, and other episodes of this podcast, or information on working with me, you can visit multifamilyleadership.com. All right, so David, your candidate is your customer and your customer is your candidate. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, I believe that the talent acquisition market has changed. We saw a sea change across the nation, across the world, but particularly here in the States, that the recession of 2008 kind of changed the game. Prior to the recession, candidates, they were plentiful. Employers were hiring. And then, of course, when the recession came, it tripled. Candidates were even more plentiful. Employers had their choices. But as we've seen the economy get better and better and better, and here we are in 2017, the candidate experience is extremely important. Now, you add to that the influx of the millennial workforce, which is actually a larger population than the baby boomers. And then you add on top of that technology. And then you add on top of that employers like Lewis, where I work, that are embedded in a community, have a tight marketplace. Here at Lewis, we have a large county where most of our properties and developments are, both in Northern and Southern California. All those come together in that the experience that a candidate for a job wants is very much like the experience of a consumer. They want that experience to be personalized for them. They want the experience to have some form of technology to it, such as the ability to apply quickly, easily, preferably on their phone. They want it to be authentic. They want to feel that they can get a good grasp of the culture, of the vibe, the feel of the organization. And they want to know that the company has some type of social footprint in their community. And that's exactly what, when someone wants to buy a product from a company, that's the same thing they're looking for. They're looking for experience, authentic, tech, and that the company is doing ethical work. So that's what I mean by the candidate for your job is looking at your opening and your company the same way they would look at a product. And if a recruiting team and a leadership team can see that, you've got a good combination. And that means that, particularly, again, going back to the community aspect here at Lewis, any candidate who applies for a job that I'm posting or recruiting for is probably going to be familiar with our product, meaning our apartment communities, our planned community developments, our shopping centers. And if the experience is authentic and positive, they're going to more than likely be a customer of our product. And then vice versa. If a customer has a great experience renting at one of our communities with our staff, or shopping at a Lewis shopping center, or what they felt of the brand, they're more likely going to apply for a job. Those two experiences are really tied together. That's what I mean by that.
And so many people in the multifamily industry today have discovered the industry in ways they never really ventured out to, seek it out. In other words, they were doing something else and they were referred into the industry, or they've lived at a community and then realized, well, goodness, I want to work by a pool and a resort property, and what is this all about? And so that referral organically is important. But so recruitment is marketing.
It absolutely is. Recruiters today should have a strong grasp of what they're doing for the organization. At many companies, the majority of them, I would debate, the recruiting team is more front-facing with the public than executives, than department leadership. They are the gatekeepers of the organization. They are the salespeople of the organization. They touch the candidate and the public through the process so many ways. And you're right. Someone who rents at one of our communities, if that experience is good, they want the same experience if they apply for a job. And they might get that feeling. They've never heard of property management. They've never heard of that they can be a leasing consultant, even though they've been in sales or customer service their entire career.
We have to think about things in new ways. Historically, though, sometimes the recruitment and HR department has been sort of, we've benefited, as you stated before, with some natural demand for opportunities. And so the supply and demand in the job market, if you look at how we evaluate what a building, what a unit or a property should rent for, there's metrics and data and analytics and a lot of thought and survey and discussion around what we should charge for rent and the value of that rent and what the competitors do. But in terms of how we approach the recruitment job market, if we looked at it as a market in the same way we look at our rental market, we might find more opportunity to create value there. In other words, invest in beefing up the recruitment marketing business, or maybe the ad budget, or those types of things. How were you able to take your department, get buy-in from leadership, and accomplish the things that you've been able to accomplish? Because you've grown quite a bit.
Yeah, we've grown, and it's been a learning experience over time. I always tell people that recruiting and talent acquisition is really moving at light speed. So all the ways that I think and the initiatives that I've started and things that Lewis has done, it really happened, it seems, not that long ago. But that's not right or wrong. It's just how technology and the landscape is evolving. But you're right. To look at recruiting, hiring people, attracting people to your open jobs, the same way you look at renting apartments, they're not very different, and they shouldn't be. Traditionally, companies can have a large spend on job ads, posting jobs on Career Builder, Monster, LinkedIn, Craigslist. That's a lot of money. Same thing with marketing and advertisements for renting of apartments. But if you can create that brand, again, going back to a community brand, I've found that if you can funnel the public candidates to content, such as on a web page or different social media, which is very low cost, the candidates will eventually find themselves at your job posting. And that job posting could be on your website, meaning, again, going back to low cost. And I have found that the budget that I used to spend 3 years ago, 4 years ago, especially 5 years and beyond, is going down and down little by little, because candidates are coming where we want them to go. They're reading a blog post, they're reading some content, they're going to our website. And that's a savings. There's that data that you can show to leadership. The cost for my job ads is going down and down and down, and where candidates are coming from is this branded content. And that can be a huge win for a recruiting team.
And David, I like what you said about learning, and because we have to be a student of our business and take responsibility to understand what's new, what's fresh, but that can also be complicated. And so getting clarity in that message, again, comes back to recruitment as marketing, and we need to get clear about what we're really trying to accomplish. And so it's fascinating to me, though, because, I mean, as just the way that we shop and the way that we consume the world today, I mean, renting an apartment or purchasing products on Amazon, there's not really one single source that you can oftentimes attribute to the success of a program. And so I've seen recruiters make, the wrong decisions because we just don't have the right information. And so, an employee will come in from a referral and realize, well, they saw it on job post, didn't apply, but saw that that opportunity was available, went to LinkedIn, searched your profile there, saw that you guys wrote a great article about the culture or the programs you're working on in the community, became interested in that, went to your properties and saw that you guys are doing some great things there, and then somehow found a friend to introduce you. And the reality is, if you don't have that sort of ecosystem of content and products and postings, and you've got to be everywhere. It's no longer here or there. Would you agree?
Yeah. You're hitting it perfectly, Patrick. The touch points of the consumer experience. I talked about this with my VP the other day. Imagine you're thinking about going on vacation. All those things you can do to choose the hotel, to read reviews, to read a blog about scuba diving, to reach out to a friend who knows someone who went there. That experience of choosing that hotel is the exact same that a candidate can go through before choosing a job to apply for. It's really interesting, and I think progressive companies are beginning to realize that and realize they can have a financial impact of lowering a budget for traditional job posting, traditional recruiting, and pumping up budget for employer branding. I read a statistic somewhere that 53% or 55% of today's leaders are realizing that just this year that they're starting to prioritize employer branding in their budgets and really giving recruiting, talent acquisition, employee referral programs kind of a seat at the table and putting money to that.
Right. That's true. And our program, the Multifamily Scout, which is essentially multifamilyscout.com, we're improving those initiatives just to help those brands that maybe doesn't have somebody on the team strategically thinking about things like the way that you are. And so you have a passion, though, for this, right? I mean, it comes down to the marketing aspect, right?
Exactly. What helped here at Lewis is there was a gentleman named Alex Palomero in our marketing team, and he and I, years ago, we hit it off. We went to lunch together, and we realized we were speaking the same language. Alex was involved in revenue, marketing for revenue. I was involved in marketing for candidates, jobs, talent acquisition, but it's the same conversation. We were finding that we were saying the same things. His was about rents and units. Mine was about candidates and experience and job boards, but it's the same conversation. And then years ago, we started realizing that progressive companies were doing the same thing. We went to a huge talent conference at LinkedIn, and it was amazed. This was about 4 years ago. We went to this conference, and there are vice presidents, CEOs, talent acquisition leaders from all across the globe. And everyone we met, including the people from LinkedIn, were saying, "We cannot believe you're the only company here who brought," they were pointing at me, they'd say, "You're the only recruiter here who brought their marketing guy. And that is brilliant."
That's true.
That's when we knew we were onto something.
And so, David, when we talked about earlier about, the personalization and the culture and being authentic in your communication, Do you think it's important to tell the employee story, or, are things changing in terms of how we talk about our companies? Because there's a lot of brochure talk. Think of it like if we're going to collapse the distance between marketing and for rents and marketing for talent and people. When you think about a brochure on a property, the words that we use sometimes are just overused, right? Luxury apartment, or even luscious landscape. I mean, I can just think of the words that somebody introduced in, years and years ago, and they just carry forward in a lot of the language we use in marketing the apartments for rent. And so is there power in story and how we tell the authentic story about what it's really like to work there and message the audience, the world about that?
Absolutely. I've got a couple points that'll highlight that.
Well, let's do this. Before we do that, can we listen in on what Leilani had to say about Lewis?
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick listen.
My name is Leilani Herrera, and I'm a community director with Lewis Apartment Communities, and I've been with the company for 2.5 years. Lewis offers so much opportunity for mentoring and coaching. They practically hand you the tools for success along with a roadmap, and they're basically like, here's how we believe you can succeed. I get so excited when somebody is saying, there's some development or some apartments being built, and I can actually tell them that's the company that I work for, that's Lewis. They hold an annual Goldie Awards, and I was actually chosen for the Rookie of the Year. I was really proud of that, and it was really nice to, to be recognized in front of all of your peers. And I put so much into the work that I do, so that was the most rewarding part of working with Lewis for me. I've never worked for a company that I felt was truly interested in my career aspirations and genuinely invested in me as a person.
So, David, that's pretty powerful when the authentic story comes out. I mean, when you're discovering reviews and you're taking those multiple touch points, are you seeing benefit in that?
Yes, we are. We're finding our marketing team can track the data on our video content, on our blog posts, and we're seeing the numbers just really go up and up. There was even some points where visitors to our Lewis Careers webpage was matching, some months exceeding visitors to our product webpage. But that's not a scary thing, because we also found that candidates who were going to the Lewis Careers webpage were also visiting the sites of our products, our Lewis Apartments page, our Lewis Group of Companies corporate page. So they're all, again, getting the complete picture of this organization they're thinking of applying to. In the case of videos like Leilani's, we try to do many of those and brand them out on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, different email campaigns we do to candidates in our candidate network. And we're finding people really respond to it. One of the blog posts we did that was written content was we interviewed a leasing consultant, and it was just a simple title, My First 6 Months as a Lewis Leasing Consultant. And we found huge numbers that were reading that, much more than some other posts about something simple or some new development. But it does the same thing. It gives that candidate, many times who are a younger demographic, maybe starting their career or thinking about changing it, and they can identify with that gentleman and go, hey, that's me. These are the things that I'm good at in my job, and they match what this guy is saying. I'm going to probably like that job a lot. And that's the key in today's talent acquisition world, is you got to be transparent. You can't use those typical buzzwords and language like you mentioned, Patrick. They're just not resounding with today's candidate as much as being honest. This is what the job will do. This is how much it'll pay. This is a typical day on this job. Our strong performers have these attributes. And lastly, here's why you will do it. You will be making an impact in your community. You'll be working with families. And you are a huge reason why people will rent at these beautiful communities. And we found that we can identify that performer, and we're attracting them so that instead of having 500 resumes come in and you have to sift through them, you might get 100 or 75. So it's less to sift through, but the quality of that candidate is matching the strengths and attributes and skills that the team wants. And it's a good match. I've always had a joke that I say, if you throw a job fair and 500 people show up and you only hire 10, sure, you had 500 people show up, but that's not a successful job fair. If you throw a job fair and 50 people show up and you hire 10, you're attracting the right candidate, and that's a successful job fair.
So when you partner with your leadership team to deploy these strategies, were there any snags? I mean, you mentioned lessons learned and just constantly evolving through the process. But what would you tell somebody just considering a new approach in how they find talent?
Well, I think more and more recruiting has to be ready to show data, has to be ready to show what is the value of this project, of this idea. What problem do you have? What solution do you want to try, and what is the expected result? And is there a savings? Is there a cost? Is there a revenue possibly? And I would say to recruiting teams out there, remember that you're the specialist. You're the one who knows how to do this job. And leadership good leadership will listen to you. And there might be a little reactions or a little bit of, why would we do that? But if you can make your case with data, and you'll be ready. And if you can show that value, lower turnover, lower cost in job posts, better employee engagement, higher amount of employee referrals, you're making your case. And that there's a number to that.
And we've done some marketing to current residents of apartment buildings and communities, and we've been doing the resident referrals for years, and there's been some success around that. And so when we look at our existing employees, are you finding that the more you invest in them, I mean, this might be more of an obvious question, that you're retaining more in terms of more loyalty? I mean, because there's a lot of information that's sometimes generalized and sometimes just wrong about, younger leaders in the world today, about them only staying at work, for very short periods of time. And the data that we have at the Best Places to Work program, that doesn't support that argument, because when we're seeing investor or employees that are invested in, and there's loyalty, just in Lelianas' case, I mean, you're putting her message out there to the world, showcasing her as a leader, giving her more opportunity to invest in the company, maybe cross mentor, or even develop other leaders within that department. But are you seeing that the employee referral, I mean, moving everybody from just David and David's team as a recruiter to where all employees, everyone is a recruiter?
Yeah, everyone is a recruiter. It's not surprising that more than half of recruiters would say that employee referrals are the top source of hires. But I would add to that a referred employee is a quality hire. They're faster to hire. They usually perform much better. They can stay longer in the company. But an organization has to understand that. Employee referrals can be your top source of hire. I think it's 48 or 50% of quality hires come from employee referrals. And if you invest in that employee through a training program, through not just onboarding, not just the first week or first day even, and then off you go, but touching them throughout their career, particularly the first year, different training. If that person ever moves up the ladder, training on how to be a supervisor, how to be a great coach, a great mentor, giving them access to technology. We had a great initiative here at Lewis where we partnered with lynda.com through LinkedIn, where we gave all employees a 60-day access for free to thousands of online training tools. And we encouraged them and we trained managers, let your employees use these. And we've got a great reaction. And all of that creates an engagement with employees that is just positive. It can help recruiting because they're going to refer their friends, family, and social network. And it's going to help them internally to grow. It's interesting. I did a study where I put out a questionnaire to new hires. And I found that people who were not referred touched many places like a glass door. People who were referred by a friend or an employee many times didn't touch anywhere else. They went straight to application. They didn't touch a glass door. So there's an interesting note for an employer. Let's say you're an employer who doesn't have the greatest Glassdoor rating, but you have an employee population that is loyal and they enjoy it. How can you reach that candidate that maybe doesn't know much about your company and is going to Glassdoor and seeing some negative comments? Invest more in hearing from your own employees why they're here, what excites them, what they're passionate about, and get that message out there and blow up your employee referral program. And you'll find that the people that are referred by those engaged employees are less likely to be influenced by some negative reviews by someone who, hasn't been with the company for years.
Right. And that can be a challenge for some. And sometimes that new hire is the person or part of the process to change that perception or those outcomes. I mean, companies are nothing more than a collection of people. And so when they get together, they can do some great things. So tell me about, let me back up and say, you mentioned early about the candidate experience. And, when you say employee referrals, and I see a lot of that data too. And sometimes, there's other ways that candidates are learning about opportunities. They're coming in through referrals because companies don't follow up. And that's that candidate experience. Imagine leasing apartments and just not following up with somebody, and maybe they didn't qualify. Maybe there wasn't the right fit. There was maybe cultural relationship stuff, or perhaps the job got filled. But the bottom line is, when we look at that as a brand opportunity, if we don't manage that properly, that could impact us in different ways. I mean, they could be having lunch with somebody and negatively reflecting your brand, and that leads to another missed opportunity. So tell me about what can you do to improve that follow-up process and that brand experience for those that never make it in?
For the public that applies for a job but maybe doesn't get hired, is that what you're saying?
Right, because you're going to get a lot of applications sometimes, a lot of attention. And I think a lot of people focus on the people we hire and who we convert, but the reality is we're missing a lot of opportunity in how we handle that other relationship.
Here at Lewis, we have a good ATS can help with that. But simply put, when someone applies through your applicant tracking system, they're captured much like in marketing software. You have their information. Here at Lewis, we make the application process extremely simple. The days of a candidate taking 45 minutes or an hour to apply through an old ATS.
And a lot of times that's not old in some cases. There's a lot of people still there.
Yeah, that's gonna hurt a company because the drop-off rate for someone, I think the latest numbers are well over 50%. And you also have to have it mobile if possible. So the ability to apply for a job in under 5 minutes on your phone is extremely attractive to candidates, just like buying something on Amazon. But once you have captured that information, you got to treat that candidate like a marketing lead. Of course, you're going to review them for the job that's open, but you can use that information to send email campaigns, Those campaigns can be about other jobs. Maybe you have someone to refer. Maybe you know a friend. Thank you for applying for our leasing consultant. Did you know that Lewis also hires in your community for accounting, for finance positions, for administrative positions? Take a look now. Click here for more information. That's the same thing that leasing apartments and capturing those leads and following up. You can also send the branded content I was talking about. You can send email campaigns just introducing your other social sites, and some of those sites are going to go back to product. And then what we've done here at Lewis, where we've even done campaigns related to lease-ups. We're opening new communities in these in these areas, in these counties, in these cities. We're going to have so many apartments available, and that it's again going back to treating your candidate like your customer and a customer like a candidate.
And so now we're talking about, the process and the priority and how to invest in it from a company standpoint. But how do you get clarity over the message? How do you know what to say when, if you're putting out all this information?
Well, you got to try to identify with what your company's footprint is in the community. Here at Lewis, we are a large, privately held family. The company was started over 60 years ago by a husband and wife, and we become a major home builder in Southern California, where we're one of the largest privately held real estate developers in the nation. Many of the people in our community, they know the name Lewis, and the next thing that comes to mind is family and community. If you can capture that in your postings, in your content, touch it back to community, it really resonates with people, and we found that it resonates with our employees. We've done some informal surveys. We've also done some all entire company surveys, and one of the things we always hear back is the employees have a feeling of family, and if you can touch on that, we've found that people identify with it, renters and candidates. But you got to kind of keep that in there, and I try my best to keep that in job postings, and in content. You are one of the biggest reasons why people rented a Lewis property. You are impacting your community, your neighborhood, and your friends and family. It's been what we've done, and I need to do more of it, but what we've done so far, particularly this year, has shown that, and I love it.
We're in an age now where communication is happening all around us in many different ways. I think it's 3,000 different messages that are coming at us at any time. Now here we are on audio, right? And so there's new platforms to listen to the story. You guys do a good job on video, print, job boards, social, all those things. So what do you look for? I know that your messaging is pretty clear on the values and alignment. That seems great. It does help to have executive leaders and owners that are committed to that process. You first have to have a story to tell, right? It has to be authentic. So yeah, it starts at the top. But what do you look for when you're bringing somebody in a person?
It depends on the position, but there is one overriding quality here at Lewis. I think it's integrity. Someone who's honest, someone who truly, you got to love people to be in this business. If you squeeze it to its core, what does our company do? We make communities, whether that's a 500-unit apartment community, whether it's a large, thousands of acres, master plan community. We make community, and it goes back to people. It goes back to family. I look for candidates who understand that, who want to put a little bit of themselves into their job. I look for people whose strengths are what I call the 2 Ps, being professional but also being personable. I think that's a great combination. But I go back to integrity and knowing that they want to put a piece of them into the job. And then we have to reward that by doing our best as an employer to tell them about our history, to train them, to offer opportunities for advancement throughout their career, not just in those first 90 days. And I think we've been doing a pretty darn good job here at Lewis. And we've seen turnover numbers go down. We've seen reactions and feedback from our employees, some really nice comments and things that let us know that what we're doing is working, and what else can we do?
Right. I mean, you think about you guys are developers, and so you before a community comes forward, I mean, there's architectural designs and renderings, and there's a vision of what is to be created. And what I like about what you're doing internally is that you're the architect of this talent acquisition process, and so it's nice to see that those developers, do have that perspective. Fee managers, I imagine, have a little more challenge too, as well, because portfolios change, ownership structures change, consolidation is happening, and so as a developer, you can envision a community, you can envision the vision of the property itself, and the type of customer that you might have, and anticipate the needs of that customer, and then appropriately, position the property with the right team to deliver on that experience. What would you say to somebody that their ownership is changing, and they go from one property and the goals are different, and then now they don't work for that visionary founder developer with deep history, and they're just struggling to manage both compliance of business and also resident experience, and then demand of leasing. I mean, how do you manage all these things if you're not a Lewis?
Such as you're talking about, say, I'm an apartment property manager and I'm working for a fee manager, and then maybe I move to a different organization. Well,
yeah, I mean, even what it took to create the department, the program, and the investment in all these talent acquisition strategies. If you're a fee manager and your portfolio is expanding quickly, or it's it could be changing, how do you deploy some of these strategies if you don't lean on some of the founder-based history and sort of the stabilization of just having the same portfolio?
Well, I would go. That happens here at Lewis. We have hired many people who come from the fee managed community. Lewis is a little different in that we hold on to the assets and we develop new product. That stability is there, so it's very different. That can be, from my history, I can tell you it can be challenging because I've heard those stories. I would talk to the fee managed business community leadership. What do you want to accomplish with your staff, with your asset? And then you got to look at how the changing landscape can be your best friend or your worst enemy. Now, if you're a manager of those properties and maybe you don't have buy-in from the owner, the leadership, or maybe they're in a different state and communications an issue, the ability to go back to data, to return on investment, to show that you can impact rents. We've seen that here at Lewis. Our director of sales management has made comments and shared reports of how rents are going up. Revenue is being impacted positively from a team that is engaged, from a team that doesn't turn over, from a team that refers to other communities. That's money on the table. And so I would say it's got to be a partnership. I hope that it would come from the owner down, but if it can't, then I would go back to showing data and showing return on investment, that an engaged team, a team that understands the part they play in the community at the asset, it's going to make money.
Yeah, I like what you said about partnership, and that's important because those of you that are listening in that are leaders and you're growing, and perhaps maybe your portfolio is changing. I mean, the idea of a company creating a culture for you is not really the way it works. I mean, you are personally responsible for your own development. It's nice to work for a company that has, training and ongoing training and resources to mentor and develop leaders. But the reality is, when someone takes personal responsibility over that process, they're going to accelerate their career. And somebody, that's winning somewhere else might also attract you to, take another opportunity. But the reality is, when we can get good at learning how to discover our own best self and show up for others in a way that we can add value, we're going to want to be on that winning team. And so I'm loving what you're doing here, David, in this partnership process of working with leadership and then your on-site teams and your executive teams to make these initiatives come to life. And it's exciting to hear that companies are continually investing in this process. I think we all know that, a leader today, their ability to attract the right people, get them engaged effectively, both on site or at the corporate level, is really an opportunity to really differentiate yourself in the business, both as an executive and also as a management company or developer. Mm-hmm. When you can go to a partner, a finance partner or a capital partner and say, look, the investment that we have here is going to be reduced by risk because we find the best people and we execute better than anybody else. And we do that because we create an environment where they can thrive. I mean, that's got to be an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, completely agree. If a leader is not talking about the people aspect of that Excel spreadsheet, of that pro forma, I think they're missing out.
That's some good stuff. Well, David, I appreciate you taking the time, sharing it with us for this episode of the podcast. And are there any other final thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with?
I would just say that it's an exciting time. We all came out of the recession of 2008, 2009, 2010. I think we're going to continue to see talent acquisition, human resources get closer and closer, if not already have a seat at the executive table. And that is a very good thing. It's an exciting time for our industry. And I would say, take a look at your people, realize that if you keep your people happy, the customer service and the sales will take care of itself.
I love it. Well, David, thank you again for coming on the show. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Multifamily Leadership Podcast. For show notes and other resources, visit multifamilyleadership.com.